Kennedy canned 17 members of the ACIP, and the legacy media flipped out. Measles for everybody. He's taking us back to the dark ages. He's a dictator. It's politically driven. So here's a New York Times article. You can see for yourself. Party politics is said to have played a role in Kennedy's firing of vaccine advisors. Are they right? Well, let's begin with his tweet where he retired 17 people at the ACIP. All right, so can we read it? Yesterday, I retired 17 members of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or the ACIP. The CDC.gov, their external panel that wields the grave responsibility of adding new vaccines to the recommended childhood schedule. Over the coming days, I will use my platform to announce new members to populate the ACIP. None of these individuals will be ideological anti-vaxxers. They'll be highly credentialed physicians and scientists who make extremely consequential public health determinations by applying evidence-based decision-making with objectivity and common sense. Now, if I could just highlight a few more things that you should know about this. In fact, that is true. Everybody that he has appointed so far is either a PhD or an MD. And here are a few names for you to look into yourself. So Dr. Martin Kulldorff, he went to Harvard Medical School, and he's a national expert in vaccine safety. Dr. Cody Meisner, he went to Dartmouth Medical School, and he's a national recognized expert in pediatric infectious disease. Dr. Michael Ross, he's an OBGYN with expertise in hormone therapies, antibiotic trials, and immune-related conditions. Last but not least, why did he fire these people? When I reached out to Kennedy's head of comms, here's what they told me. Not one member of the ACIP ever rejected one vaccine. Not once, not ever, despite the fact that some of them were later removed for safety concerns. Next, 97% of them never bothered to fill out a conflict waiver, which is ironic because now the New York Times is going after some of his picks, suggesting that they worked with pharma companies. All right. She's not a doctor, my bad. Charlotte Moser, who was on one of the ACIP members he filed, her best credential was a master's degree in communications. And she advocated for restricting unvaccinated people from parks, pools, water parks, government buildings, theaters, sports venues, shopping centers, and other public accommodations. And last but not least, Noel Brewer, who was also fired by Kennedy, received vaccine-related grants and compensation from Merck, Pfizer, and GlaxoSmithKline. So, what do we think here? Doc, I'm going to start with you.
Got a million thoughts. First, I'm wondering if Charlotte Moser was in support of the No Kings demonstration, since she wanted to be a king and restrict you to your home and tell you how to handle your body. I mean, everybody needs to examine what they did during COVID. It was so revealing. If you finked on your neighbors for having a barbecue, if you felt that people who were unvaccinated should be withheld from getting health care, any of those things, you would have been a prison guard in Nazi Germany. That's you. That's who you are. Look at it. Don't do it next time. Charlotte Moser is one of those people. That's that. This morning, not only did he get rid of the 17 ACIP members, but he got rid of their support staff this morning.
Oh, wow.
Because those are the people actually making the decisions in the government. You know that bureaucratic underbelly are the ones sending up the advice to the people that sit on the committee positions. So that's wiping house, cleaning house as well. And the other thing he said was, I want to reestablish confidence in the Vaccine Safety Committee. We got to start over. We got to start somewhere. He's been criticized for some of the people he's appointed. I get it. Some of them have said some controversial things over the years, but let's give it a shot, everybody.
How do you feel about Robert Malone?
Well, he's one of the guys I was thinking about. Malone, I know Malone very well. He's a smart guy. I really believe he will use objectivity in evaluating stuff. He will take the position very seriously, as all these people will. But let's keep in mind, remember Gruber and Krauss, the people that I think they were on the FDA review committee for vaccine safety. They resigned because of the rush to mandate. These were two of the finest people they had. These were the ones that really were the high-quality vaccine professionals. Off the committee, no one said a peep. How come they're not freaking out about that? Why didn't the New York Times go crazy about it? Stop reading the New York Times, everybody, please. They are a biased, unthoughtful group of people who really don't know what they're talking about and behave as though they are thus saith the Lord.
May I ask you a question real quick? Sorry, real quick, because I'm a normie, meaning this is not my wheelhouse. I'm not an expert on vaccines, so I just want to kind of get my flaws out of the way. What's the issue with Malone? Like, why is Malone considered controversial?
Some of the stuff they brought up yesterday, I didn't even understand, to tell you the truth.
Doc.
He has said some things that sounded sort of problematic, and he has made claims about his patents on the mRNA platform, and as soon as you say mRNA platform, Maha goes crazy,
right,
and therefore he's tainted by that. So he's tainted on both sides.
Got it. Okay.
Here's the biggest problem with Maha, in my opinion. Where's my camera? This is my camera? It takes the bureaucracy in Washington is insane. It's insane, and nowhere more so than HHS, NIH, CDC,
FDA.
There's so many different layers to it. Give them a chance. It's going to take a minute to get them to get some change underway. And I have most faith in Jay Bhattacharya.
Oh, I love that guy.
Jay, you should, because the fact that man who was subjected to a devastating takedown by Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci in their email, we must subject this fringe epidemiologist, decorated professor, fringe epidemiologist to a devastating takedown. That man is now the head of that NIH. That is poetic. That is Shakespearean. And he's a brilliant guy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to echo what you said.
Yeah.
I love this guy for his immense courage, because in the depths of the pandemic, he had the audacity to say, maybe shutdowns, complete comprehensive shutdowns aren't a good idea.
Off with their head. Go to no kings, but off with their head.
Yeah.
And he said it in the most respectful and most well-researched way possible.
I know Jay very, very well now, and he told me, when he did that, he goes, I just was giving my opinion. He goes, I was so naive. I just thought, well, we'd talk about it, and we'd each give our opinions. This idea that we had to eliminate, we had to actually take down people who were peers as opposed to engage in the usual scientific discourse was so shocking to him. It took him about 6 months to really realize what was going on.
And some of the official policies that were in place were just so ridiculous. I don't know if you guys remember some of these, but one was that if you were going to have family gatherings over the holidays, obviously they were restricted, but you weren't allowed to sing, because apparently that propagates the virus faster. So you needed to sing under your breath.
Fantastic.
With a mask. One thing I just want to say really quick, Doc, I just want to celebrate how far we've come. The fact that we're even on this panel right now, having this conversation, because it wasn't just the professionals. Any dissenter was completely deplatformed. Even people who wanted to speak the truth unapologetically, they were limited in their capacity, because if they did speak the truth, their platform would have been entirely removed. So we had to speak in code. We had to be cryptic. Like, we couldn't even literally say the word vaccine injured.
Yeah,
even COVID vax. So we've come so far, and so we have a long way to go.
Well, we have
a long way to go. The fact we can speak about this in an open forum, I just want to celebrate.
Well, what is okay, so I agree that there were definitely mistakes made during the pandemic, obviously, and there was a lot of hysteria. People were afraid. I personally don't think individuals intentionally pursued policies because they are bad people. They wanted to do bad things.
No, they just showed themselves to be bad people by virtue of what they did.
But I also agree that the scientific debate wasn't really allowed. And honestly, I kind of fell into that hysteria because people were scared.
It was not allowed for a reason. And the reality is the evidence has come out, and Doc, please correct me if I'm wrong. That Fauci and team knew pretty darn early that this was a gain of function research baby.
That I agree with, because it was so obvious that they were trying to hide the ball when it came to the lab leak theory.
Okay,
and that's a problem.
Ask yourself why,
right?
And then what comes after that, right? So now we're not looking at existing medicine to be used as a therapeutic. Doc, isn't that protocol? What do we have that would work? And not only are they not looking at it, they're deplatforming doctors who are utilizing things like they're trying ivermectin, which was relatively benign and won a Nobel Prize. And our good friend, Dr. Sabine Hazen, ended up finding out that it did help mitigate cases of severe COVID. I still don't have a TikTok because I posted a clip of her on there talking about ivermectin as a therapeutic. Why? Why did we accelerate pushing this vaccine through the emergency use loophole, knowing while the NIH was doing research on the vaccine injured, like brand resin, another perfect example. So why do we think this is happening? Just
May I add one more quick thing? If I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, there were already patents created for some of these vaccines
for mRNA
in 2019.
As though they knew something.
Exactly, before the pandemic even officially kicked off.
You guys are going full dark on me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Doug.
Well, okay, let me add to that, because the mRNA, I guess, technology, the platform, that was developed years in advance in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, we were looking at it for cancer primarily.
Right, exactly.
Because it was dangerous.
That's why it was the rollout of the COVID vaccine was so quick, because like the platform had already kind of been discovered and created.
But not for this.
Let's not forget the fact that the Biden regime clamped down on every single influencer, every single media platform to say that you can't mention any doubts about the COVID vaccine. It extends beyond that.
Right?
Can't mention. Also, this is like unrelated. Hunter Biden's laptop can't mention certain things because otherwise you're an agent, you're a merchant of disinformation.
Wait, hold on. Stick with who was behind what you just said. So when you look at the Virality Project, it was funded by Bill Gates.
Oh, you're going so dark.
It's the truth, though. Doug, it's the truth. Okay, so just tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not going to tell you.
I don't know. I try not to go down those rabbit holes.
Unfortunately, I'm telling. Do your own homework on it.
Yeah.
So the Virality Project was in fact funded by Bill Gates through Stanford, and it was benevolent. It was meant to suss out vaccine hesitation. This is what went to the White House, and this is what was used to strategically silence dissenters, including the Facebook group of Brianne Dresden, who was injured online, just so people who were vaccine injured could connect on this. That said, who was invested in this platform? Who was invested in this tech? Who stood to lose hundreds of billions of dollars if it didn't work?
Pharmaceutical companies.
And also Bill Gates.
Let's complete the circle.
Just saying.
Because you bring up an excellent point, and I know some people out there get annoyed when I make the connection, but who is one of the biggest donors of the Democratic Party? Bill Gates. And now Melinda Gates.
I thought you were going to say pharma, and I was going to say they donate to both.
Well, no,
you're
Bill
right.
Gates in
I hear
particular.
you. No, you're right.
Reams of money. When Harris was in trouble in October, he came. There was a huge New York Times headline about Bill Gates coming in for the rescue.
Okay, so here's the other thing, though. So you have the COVID vaccine. I get that there were issues with that, especially when it comes to censorship.
Mandate.
But then, yes.
The mandate was the problem.
But the other thing that's happening simultaneously as we speak, right, is this increase of like measles cases because now parents aren't getting their children vaccinated for measles, right? So it's like a very difficult situation to navigate as a normal person who doesn't really know much about vaccines, but you want to do the right thing for your kids. And I think there's a lot of fear out there. So Dr. Drew, how do you respond to that? How do you...
Well, wait, hold on. Don't go there yet, because you took me to the next entrant.
Okay.
So very good point. You bring up...
I'm happy to talk about it.
You're about to. You're about to. So here's what happens next.
I have so much more, though.
So you're going to, because they're connected. But at the same time, all right, Kennedy has demanded that we don't, or he's demanded gold standard safety testing. He said we haven't had it. In response, CNN crowdsourced 256 studies claiming he was wrong. So now this would be the studies clip. It's a Google Doc, if you can pull that up for me, and just scroll. So basically, there's 256 studies on here that they have crowdsourced, okay?
Okay.
Now, can we pull up Kennedy's response to this? Because here's the concern, right? You've got parents who are saying, I don't know, I noticed a difference. And you've got Kennedy saying, we don't have proper safety testing. And then you've got CNN going, he's a liar. So this would be the Kennedy tweet, if you see that, Nat, where he responds to this. Do you have it, the Kennedy tweet? Hold on. Okay, good. Scroll down. Yep. Okay, whoop. Stop. Sorry. Hold. Perfect. Okay, here we go. So he says basically he wants gold standard research, right? Then many vaccine promoters have challenged this assertion, saying that there is proper safety testing. Last week, CNN, which has devolved into a shameless propagandist for Big Pharma, triumphantly announced that it had proof that my pronouncement that there have been no placebo-controlled safety trials for any routine vaccines was false. CNN gleefully claimed that it had 257 placebo-controlled studies for routine vaccines. And then he breaks down how this is baloney. So let's go with it. And Doc, you'll respond. CNN is wrong. No routine injected vaccine on CDC's schedule was licensed for children based on placebo-controlled trials. In instances where a vaccine was used as a control, You know what? This is going to be too complicated.
It's a lot.
Okay, so here's what he basically says. Correct me.
Yeah.
You take it.
The easy way to think about this is, and I really want to keep it clear, because they're going to start parsing through the science. They're going to work their way through it. The easy way to think about this is there have not been good studies. There certainly weren't good studies before the stuff was released.
Pre-licensure.
Yep. And there have never been studies on cumulative effect of vaccine. So as we go from 8 to 38 or however many we have now, that cumulative effect is completely unknown. Completely.
Such as the booster, you mean, or just over time taking different vaccines?
The fact that we have so many vaccines on the vaccine schedule that are essentially mandated, we have no idea if together they have a cumulative effect that is different than individually. Zero idea. And many of these vaccines are on the schedule for, somebody's got to explain to me, maybe they can, seems like spurious reasons. For instance, for COVID for kids is ridiculous, but okay, that's now been taken off.
Right.
Hepatitis B. I was involved in hepatitis B research in the early 80s. We were interested in it for pregnant women because in China, they had a massive problem with vertical transmission, mother to child, in unknown people who didn't know they had hepatitis B. It was a massive problem in China. That was where we were targeting the hepatitis B vaccine. Suddenly it comes over here, is we get it through and it's approved, and we're using it in healthcare providers, people that have high risk of exposure, IV drug users. All of a sudden, a child has to get it the moment they come out of the womb. The moment they get out of the womb. Why? Why are you giving that to a child?
I still have the scar on my arm because I was born in China, by the way. It's on my, you can see the indentation.
When was that mandated?
But in today's world, there is a zero probability that a mother with hepatitis B, that the delivering physician doesn't know she has hepatitis B. That child will get the hepatitis B vaccine.
Right.
Why does every child in America get that vaccine the moment they take their first breath? There's zero indication. And I brought this up to my son. We have a new granddaughter. And he brought it up with the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said she could get stuck with a needle.
Yeah, on the playground.
The child does not walk yet.
Yeah.
Why can't we delay it? What are we doing? If she goes into healthcare or she becomes an IV drug user, by all means, let's get it for her. But why are we doing this now? And does it have any effect with the other vaccines? The 9 other you're giving today? We have no idea. Who put that on the schedule? World Health Organization. Everybody? Is that a group we trust?
Which we have withdrawn from now, correct?
Correct, because
they're incredible. That's again more progress.
I guess I realize this is my starting point, everybody. I realize I can trust nothing in the media anywhere.
Yeah.
No matter what. So you can't even do your own research because you have to be skeptical of everything. But you can just at least not trust what you're hearing. And now I can't even tell who the good guys and the bad guys are anymore. I can't even tell what's right and what's wrong.
I didn't even know.
Hold on. Okay, I want to give you a little more information, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3. All right, and Doc, please, since you're the expert here, chime in.
All right.
So I actually went to Dr. Joel Warsh, who is a pediatrician, and he has his MS in epidemiology. He wrote a book called Between a Shot and a Hard Place, and I was like, Doc, what is this 256 studies? Is Kennedy wrong? He's like, it's all nuanced, just in the verbiage, which throws people off. So, for example, if Kennedy was wording this accurately, he would say the following, which Dr. Drew already pointed out. There was nothing done pre-licensure of the vaccine, number 1. Number 2, he's talking about an inert placebo. This means saline. Whereas many of these placebo trials are used against what's called an active comparable, like a previous vaccine, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so
how is that a placebo then?
It's really a head-to-head rather than a placebo control.
Right.
But they are in fact calling it a placebo trial.
Right.
But hence the nuance, right? The next question is, what is it being tested for? So some of these are for efficacy.
And for how long?
Yeah. Some of them are for efficacy, like, well, 10 years later, it still provided immunity. Some of them are for immunogenicity, to see if the body, built antibodies.
Not did they work or not, just did the body respond.
Exactly. And very few, if any, are for long-term safety. None of these are looking at 10 years, 15 years, 20 years to look for things like autoimmune conditions, autism. And listen, this is not a hill I want to die on. I'm not suggesting by any means, nor do I have the expertise to suggest that this is or isn't related to autism. But the point here is, and over half the friggin' vaccines on that list are not even on the friggin' schedule. This anthrax is not on the schedule. So the point is, Kennedy is right in saying there is no pre-licensure, inert, placebo-controlled trials that are looking at long-term safety. Fact, period, end of story. Go.
Well, so what do you say to someone who wants to do the right thing by their kids, right? And they want to get their kids vaccinated with the vaccines that make sense, but this is all leading to a lot of confusion. And quite frankly, like, I'm actually very, very concerned that an increasing number of parents in this country are refusing to get their children vaccinated for the important vaccines because of all this confusion, because there is absolutely corruption in these government agencies. There's no question about that. So, like, I don't look down on or begrudge parents who are like, I don't know, I don't want to hurt my kid, I'm not going to do any of this, because it is confusing. However, there are important vaccines for them to take,
I agree
right?
with you, Doc.
It's funny, I used to have disdain for people that wouldn't vaccinate their kids.
Same.
And now I'm like, understand that there's some big philosophical sweeping things to think about here. Centralized authority in medicine is a catastrophe. Work with your doctor, find a physician you can trust and work with, somebody who's ideally board certified in whatever the field is you're looking for, with pediatrician for kids, and work with that person and make sure that person's listened to you, your needs, your values, and if they do not, if they're dismissive, new pediatrician. But you should be taking vaccines. It's not that you shouldn't. You may want to take them in a staggered fashion, so try to avoid too much exposure
I've
time.
heard this
I understand
quite
that.
a bit, yeah.
And there are certain ones you might want to not take, like COVID and hepatitis B. Guess what? COVID, you would have been right, because it's now off the vaccine schedule.
Right.
So who was right 6 months ago? You were an anti-vaxxer because you weren't going to take a vaccine that's now been shown to be useless or not necessary. And so the whole idea of mandating healthcare, mandating what you do to your kids, mandating what you do to your body is so pathetically opposite of how healthcare is supposed to be done. And then that's one philosophy is physician and patient. That's your unit. Anything above that, I have grave concerns about. The other thing is, always remember, I was raised by a family practitioner. My dad was an old family practitioner, and he hammered into my head, medicines are dangerous. Medicines are dangerous. I didn't take an antibiotic until I was 15. I remember the day I did. He brought home some samples in like a syrup bottle. He goes, all right, here we go. Your pediatrician wants to do it. We got to do it, I guess. And I just remember that day. I'd never been exposed to a medicine ever. Tylenol, nothing. And medicines are dangerous, and we've lost track of that completely.
We have lost track of that.
We've somehow
sure,
believed that medicines are only going to make life better. No, there's no free lunch in nature. They have huge risk always, including vaccines. And when the risk reward is worth it, then you take that risk.
I mean, my mom is, recovering from bone marrow cancer, right? And so I donated my stem cells to her. She has my bone marrow now, and she's doing well. But the reason why she got bone marrow cancer is because it was a side effect of one of her medications.
Wow.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, the doctors are incentivized.
It was like steroids for her kidney.
Oh, just steroids.
Okay, hold on. I was going to go to Lindy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just one quick point. It's just, this is the issue that you have when it's a for-profit healthcare system. They are incentivized to create lifelong medical patients.
That's true, yes.
And the proper checks and balances aren't always in place.
They're also not taught.
You've disempowered the one person that's there to protect the patient, and that's the doctor. That's it. You got to empower that unit. And we've lost it completely. Physicians have no power.
Folks, we can't have this conversation without asking who is funding the New York Times, who is funding CNN. And I can tell you right now, it's Big Pharma. And that's why they raised hell when RFK Jr. said, let's ban pharma advertising on TV, because that's where their bread is buttered. And we got to follow the profit motive. And as you said, these people want lifelong patients that they can milk for the rest of our lives. And I'm just like, what you said right now just gave me chills, that medicines are dangerous. I've had firsthand experience with people just like losing everything, like losing their health because they opted for the wrong side of the risk-reward analysis, But
that's why having a doctor who you trust,
who's thinking about it, making the decision, this is why you can't grok it and get the right answer. You have to, you see a doctor because of our judgment, not because of our knowledge. You assume the knowledge base, and you can look everything up today. So it's not knowledge, it's our judgment of applying that knowledge in a given situation. given the value base, the religion, the circumstance, the age, the feelings, the input of the family, all the aspects of that individual, trying to make that decision on behalf of that person in that circumstance, that's what you're doing.
Can I ask you a quick question really quick? How do you find that person? We did a segment last week where we're talking about how AI is being so overused. I saw a video on X where the person is filming over their doctor's shoulder and they're checking with ChatGPT. So many people are either indoctrinated by the medical industry or they just don't care, and they've used AI, and now these are starting to become some of the doctors. Do you have any tips to actually find somebody who's good, who you can work with?
It's really a mess right now.
It really is. Like, I've struggled to find a good GP.
You usually can. Most of them are concierge, unfortunately, now.
Yeah, they are.
But you get what you pay for in this day and world. But you have to really use your own sensibility and judgment about that. The not caring, particularly post-COVID, has been out of control.
Yeah, I also want to know, when my doctor prescribes me something, are they getting a kickback?
No, that's impossible.
I just like, what
how would you get it?
They're not.
They don't get
how would I get a kickback?
No.
How would that
ask
happen?
this,
but hold.
because I was prescribed birth
consulting
control
fees or
in 2018.
Speaking engagements is what she's thinking of.
So like, I was prescribed birth control not because of sex or anything, but because I had an eating disorder, and she said it would jumpstart my period.
Yeah. So
she put me on hormonal birth control,
which is
ruined my
reasonable
life,
because with anorexia you can get premature ovarian failure, you can get osteoporosis.
Well, I had amenorrhea.
Yeah, you get all that stuff.
Right, and so I'm being very, hopefully this helps somebody else, but it ruined my mental health. And I went to her and she's like, oh, it's, maybe, she implied that I was imagining it and that I should just see how
Don't ever.
No.
When a doctor says you're imagining something,
that's crazy.
Change immediately.
Right, but I feel like I wasted 5 years of my life, and I'm just wondering, why was she so insistent on this drug? I'm very curious.
There's zero probability that she makes any money from it. There is every probability that she wants to move on to the next patient right now.
Yeah.
And she just has to keep going, move. And she has confidence. She was trained. The training we get, you have to understand, the training we get is a little bit culty. We are trained from on high, and we do it over and over and over and over again. That's thus saith the Lord. And we are trained not to question our superiors, the people in the academic infrastructure. And if you step back and think and take a minute, it takes time, and we don't have time.
So my life was just collateral damage for her schedule, basically.
It's a little, to say it that bluntly, I don't want to go that hard on it.
It was very difficult.
I blame the system.
Yeah, the system has problems, big time.
She should have gone. I mean, did she refer you to anybody else?
No, I went to her repeatedly saying that
you can always refer it out. If you don't have time, get somebody else involved.
One more thing I would love to ask you, Doc, just while we're on this topic.
Before you ask, though, because it's going to change the topic, and I want to just add more to like what Lindy is saying, because right now there's this trend happening. Oregon just banned it, which is great, but we need like a nationwide policy that prevents private equity firms from buying up.
Yeah, that's going to go bad.
They're buying public hospitals, nonprofit hospitals, and when they do that, they introduce a profit motive into those hospitals, and they ensure that it's as efficient as possible so they can maximize profits, so doctors don't get to spend enough time with their patients, and it just kind of becomes like a factory, like
I
move them
can tell
out.
you stories that would blow your mind if we have time, because I worked in a for-profit hospital, and the problem again wasn't the for-profit hospital, it was the insurance companies.
Yep, that's the fourth pillar of this kind of catastrophic quartet that doesn't get a ton of attention.
But did we finish?
Sorry about that, Amy.
No.
I just wanted to say, so I was having this vaccine debate about the COVID vax like a year ago, 2 years ago. And so many of the people that I was debating were saying that the vaccine injury report on the government's website, that is not seen as a credible source to make an argument.
It's also significantly underreported.
So what can we do then? What systems could we put in place to act? Because there were hundreds of thousands of those, and they weren't deemed as credible reports.
I know. Listen, that VAERS has been a catastrophe. But I get overwhelmed trying to answer that question.
I'm sorry.
Because I've seen a lot of vaccine injury, a lot. We are just beginning to be able to say those words out loud without losing our license. It's becoming very difficult to sort out who's a vaccine injury, who's a post-COVID, who's both, because everybody's had both, most people. You can certainly look at the nucleocapsid antibodies, and if somebody only has spike, that's not a post-COVID, that's a post-vaccine. And there are growing groups of those. I interviewed a number of these doctors, McCullough, Jordan Vaughn, longcovid.com. All these people have huge populations now of post-vaccine injured. They will come up with some published data. We'll begin to understand that. But VAERS, let me just give you an example of VAERS. So James, I'm blanking on people's names right now, but there was a study group that had included a rheumatologist whose child had a child that just died of a vaccine accident. He reported it to VAERS. He followed it up to VAERS. He got Dr. Marks on the phone and said, I've been reporting this death. And Marks goes, I guess it slipped through the cracks. Normally a death doesn't slip through the cracks. What are you going to do? It's like, this should have been a holy shit moment. A child's death didn't even get acknowledged by us. I can tell you, the elderly patients don't get a lot of vaccine reaction. My patients wanted the vaccine, they took it, they took the boosters. One had a reaction. She was 99 years old. She had a life-threatening reaction. She didn't want to go to the hospital, so I had to manage the whole thing at home. Thank God I got her through it. She died at nearly 101. Wow. But when she was 99, about to turn 100, she had this reaction. I reported it to VAERS. Thank you for your report. Here's your report number. We will follow up with you. I followed up again. I followed up again. To this day, no follow-up from VAERS. Wow. It was a life-threatening, severe reaction that went down as insignificant.
Can I put a button on this? And Doc, correct me if I get anything wrong here, obviously. But to answer your one question, Anna, that I forgot. So in 1986, Reagan gave the pharma companies blanket immunity on vaccines. So there are no downstream consequences. After that...
If they're on the schedule. Yeah, if they're on the vaccine schedule.
Oh, wow.
After that, we went from 3 routine injections by age 1 in 1986 to 25 routine injections by age 1 in 2025.
I didn't know Reagan did that. That's terrible.
Reagan did a lot of things, huh? I'm just starting to learn more about all the amnesty he gave that created Reagan.
With laws of unintended effects.
Yes.
Laws of unintended effects.
With that said, it's what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What I've taken away from it, speaking with doctors like yourself, is you educate yourself so that when you go speak to a doctor, you can ask the right questions and you'll know right away if they're full of baloney. I interviewed Dr. Arthur Agatston, who's a cardiologist that created the calcium score. If I go to a doctor and they just take my blood work and make a determination that I need statins without doing a calcium score, I'm like, oh, you have no idea what you're doing. Thanks for playing. So the more you educate yourself, the better able you are to find that right doctor to work with you and explain things to you. And I would also suggest that there's a huge amount, as mentioned, of nuance here. And utilizing that doctor, you can say, do I need Hep B? Well, no, but maybe you want whooping cough. Like, you can play out the cost-benefit analysis more effectively. But you have to educate yourself by listening to people like Dr. Drew, for example, and then you can find the right professional that will work with you. Thoughts on my conclusions, Doc?
100%. That summarizes it. I only have 2 things that sort of flew out of this conversation for me. One is, I don't know if you saw Dr. Paul Offit this morning saying the fact that it's off the schedule for pregnant women is going to result in lawsuits against the federal government. I thought to myself, oh my God, he doesn't even know how the practice of medicine works. It would not be against the government, it'd be against the providers and the insurance company. The federal government have nothing to, so he has no idea about clinical medicine. I just realized that he revealed himself this morning.
Right.
So say what you will about whether it should or shouldn't be on the schedule. It's a controversy, we'll get it sorted out. But the other thing, and I think this is a bigger topic for me that I'll bring up a few times today, you mentioned the word hysteria. We have become hysterical in this country.
Yes.
Hysteria, and the world. The whole world is hysterical.
Yes.
And I think hysteria is the enemy right now. You have to be I have some deep thoughts about it. We'll get into it. But if you feel yourself becoming hysterical or the media is making you hysterical, please avoid that, because it will have you make some bad decisions that you will not like yourself, the decision you made afterwards.
Dr. Drew, you bring up a really good point, because you said the doctor had no idea what he was talking about. A lot of times people don't, but they're suddenly a medical expert.
The people that learned how to say the word hydroxychloroquine the next day had an opinion about whether it should be used.
It's because their political tribe told them to say that. And so they adopt an entire menu
and the dogma of big pharma trickling
and the
down
media,
into
the media.
Well, what about hydroxychloroquine? Was that proven to work against COVID?
I am not a huge fan of ivermectin hydroxychloroquine. I use Paxlovid when I need a pharmaceutical agent.
But it wasn't there in the beginning, Doc.
It wasn't. However, I would go to the mat to protect my peers for them to use that if that's what they think is in the best interest of the patient. At very minimum, that doctor is going to follow up and see that patient again and not say to them, come back to the hospital when you're blue, which is what we told patients. Jeez. That was the most disgusting chapter in medical history in this country, as far as I'm concerned. But hydroxychloroquine, I happened to be doing my rheumatology board reviews right at the time all this controversy was breaking out around hydroxychloroquine. I thought, I've been prescribing this stuff for years. I've never seen a single side effect. All my mild lupus patients get it and stuff. And I was using it at one point for travel. And I was on my rheumatology question. It's a series of questions I answer. And one of the questions was, should you maintain hydroxychloroquine when a woman is pregnant, a lupus patient? And the answer was yes, because it's completely inert. And I thought, oh my God, that is the only medicine I'm aware of that's recommended to be continued during pregnancy because it is so benign.
Interesting.
So.
Okay. And last but not least, I think your other question is, how do you know? Well, if we get off Kennedy's back and let him do the studies that he wants to do, non-conflicted, we may have more answers.
And if you want to hang your hat on somebody, Bhattacharya, just lay your flag down, put your flag right there, and then see what comes around him and watch that.
Thank you so much for watching Her Take. If you like the show, can you help us out by subscribing to the channel, clicking the notification button, sharing, commenting, joining the conversation? It helps us out a ton with the algorithm. We appreciate you.